Have you ever met someone who seems to chase attention like it's oxygen? Someone who posts constantly, name drops, overshares their achievements, or quietly panics at the thought that one day no one will remember they existed. At first glance, it looks like arrogance or narcissism. But dig a little deeper, and you'll find something far more human and far more painful: the terror of being forgotten. This fear has a name in psychology. It's called fear of oblivion, legacy anxiety, or sometimes existential invisibility. It's the dread that when we die, or even while we're still alive, our name, our story, our impact will simply evaporate, as if we were never here at all. Today we're going to explore exactly why some people are haunted by this fear, where it comes from, how it shapes their behavior, often in ways that push others away, and most importantly, what can be done about it. Let's begin with the roots. Most psychological fears have an evolutionary echo. Fear of heights keeps us from falling. Fear of rejection once kept us inside the tribe where survival was possible. So what survival purpose could the fear of being forgotten possibly serve? It turns out this fear is deeply tied to one of humanity's greatest evolutionary upgrades: self-awareness. Around 2 to 3 million years ago, our brains grew large enough that we became aware of our own mortality. We're one of the only species that can contemplate the fact that we will die. And once you know death is coming, the next logical question is, after I'm gone, will anything of me remain? Anthropologists call this the birth of symbolic immortality. Early humans started burying their dead with tools, jewelry, and art because they needed to believe that something of the person lived on. Cave paintings, megalithic tombs, pyramids, these weren't just shows of power. They were desperate attempts to scream into the void, "I was here!" Fast forward to today, and most of us no longer build literal monuments. Instead, we build digital ones. Likes, followers, views, viral moments, these are modern grave goods. And for some people, the need to be remembered becomes so intense that it overrides almost everything else. So who exactly develops this fear at a pathological level? Research points to 4 major developmental pathways. First, inconsistent or neglectful parenting in early childhood. When a child's emotional needs are met unpredictably, hot and cold attention, love that has to be earned, they learn that their existence only matters when they perform, achieve, or make themselves visible. Being seen becomes proof of being loved. Being ignored feels like annihilation. Second, the gifted child, or parentified child, syndrome. Many people who fear oblivion were the family's little adult, the one who had to be exceptional to justify their place. They were praised for medals, grades, and talent, but rarely for simply existing. As adults, they feel that if they stop achieving, they stop mattering. Third, traumatic loss or sudden invisibility. Losing a parent young, being displaced by a new sibling, surviving abuse where you were told you don't matter, or experiencing public humiliation. These events can imprint the belief that being forgotten is not just possible, but probable. And fourth, cultural and generational messaging. In some families, especially those who survived war, genocide, or forced migration, there's an explicit mandate: make something of yourself so the sacrifices weren't in vain. The unspoken corollary: if you disappear into ordinariness, you betray everyone who came before you. These 4 pathways create what psychologists call an immortality-seeking personality structure. So how does this fear actually show up in everyday behavior? There are 8 core patterns you'll recognize immediately once you know what to look for. Chronic self-documentation. They take photos of everything, post every milestone, live-stream ordinary moments. It's not just sharing, it's archiving proof of life. Name-dropping and association climbing. They surround themselves with famous or powerful people not just for status, but because being connected to someone important feels like borrowing permanence. Legacy projects started too early. Writing memoirs at 30, planting trees with plaques, starting foundations in their own name while still alive. It's not generosity, it's terror management. Extreme sensitivity to being forgotten in small ways. They'll remember if you didn't wish them happy birthday. They notice who wasn't at their event. A missed text can feel like erasure. Overworking and burnout. If they stop producing, who are they? Rest feels like disappearing. Paradoxical self-sabotage. Some will push people away because deep down they believe everyone leaves or forgets eventually. So they make the prophecy come true to control it. envy of those who seem naturally remembered. They resent people who are loved just for being themselves, because that kind of love feels impossible to them. And finally, the most heartbreaking one, performative humility. They'll say, "I don't need recognition," while secretly spiraling if they don't get it. Now here's where it gets psychologically fascinating. Terror management theory, developed by Sheldon Solomon, Jeff Greenberg, and Tom Piszczynski, shows that when people are reminded of their own death, they double down on whatever gives them symbolic immortality. In experiments, judges who were reminded of mortality gave harsher sentences, upholding cultural values. People bought more luxury goods, status, and yes, became more obsessed with fame. In one chilling study, participants were asked to imagine their own funeral. Those with high fear of oblivion described funerals with huge crowds, long speeches, and lasting monuments. Those with low fear described small gatherings and, "just throw my ashes in the ocean." Your imagination of your own funeral is one of the most reliable predictors of how much you fear being forgotten. But here's the cruel paradox. The harder someone chases remembrance, the more likely they are to be forgotten.
Why?
Because the behaviors driven by this fear, attention-seeking, one-upping, chronic self-promotion, trigger something psychologists call reactance in others. People pull away. The very thing the person fears, being forgotten, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So is there a way out? Yes, but it's not easy. It requires rewiring a belief that was often formed before the person had words. The healing path has 5 non-negotiable stages. Stage 1. Name the fear without shame. Most people feel deep embarrassment about wanting to be remembered. They call it vain or selfish. But it's human. Acknowledging, "I'm terrified of being forgotten," is the first step to taking its power away. Stage 2. Separate existence from performance. This is the core wound. Therapy modalities like internal family systems, IFS, or schema therapy are particularly effective here. The person has to learn, often for the first time, that their worth isn't tied to output. One exercise that works powerfully. Write a letter from your 90-year-old self to your current self, giving permission to rest, to be ordinary, to be loved without achievement. Stage 3. Build being relationships instead of doing relationships. Seek out people who love you on your worst day, when you have nothing to offer. These relationships are medicine. They prove that you can be unemployed, sick, or failing, and still matter. Stage 4. Redefine legacy in terms of ripple, not statue. The healthiest form of symbolic immortality isn't a building with your name on it. It's the quiet ways you've changed people who will never know your name. The stranger who was kind because you were kind to them 10 years ago. That's real permanence, and it's achieved through presence, not performance. Stage 5. Practice voluntary obscurity. This is the advanced work. Deliberately do things that will never be seen or credited. Donate anonymously. Help someone who can never pay you back. Create art you never show. Each act chips away at the belief that unseen equals non-existent. There's a beautiful concept in Japanese aesthetics called mono no aware, the gentle sadness of things passing. It's the opposite of fighting oblivion. It's learning to touch the world lightly, knowing everything fades, and finding that bittersweet truth not terrifying, but freeing. I want to end with a story. In 2019, a researcher studied the last words of death row inmates, people who knew exactly when they would be forgotten by the world. Almost none talked about their achievements. Almost none mentioned fame, money, or status. They said things like, "Tell my mom I finally understand. I hope my daughter knows I loved her. Tell them I wasn't always the worst thing I did." In their final moments, when the game was truly over, the fear of being forgotten dissolved. What remained was connection. That's the secret no one tells you when you're frantically trying to matter. The people who are remembered best are the ones who spent the least time worrying about it. They poured themselves into loving, creating, and serving, and the memory took care of itself. If you're watching this and part of you is exhausted from running from oblivion, hear this. You don't have to earn the right to take up space. You don't have to build a monument to justify your heartbeat. You are already unforgettable to the universe that grew galaxies just to hold you for a little while. And when you can rest in that, really rest, the irony is that people will remember you long after you've stopped needing them to. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this touched something in you, Do the scariest and most healing thing possible. Tell one person today that they matter to you, not for what they do, but for who they are. Because in the end, the cure for being forgotten has never been louder footsteps. It's quieter love.